Hi, I'm Laura Volpin-Testa. Welcome. Today we're going to sketch Naomi Campbell from the cover of Brazilian Vogue using iPad.
Hi, this is Laura Volpin-Testa from Fashion Illustration Tribe, and today I pulled up this old video that used to have no sound, and I'm going to walk you through a digital sketching process of a drawing that I did using Tayasui sketches years ago. Well, not years ago, about a year and a half ago. And I did this on an iPad mini while I was in a parking lot waiting for my daughter to grab something at the craft store. And the reason I'm sharing that is because it's a 20-minute drawing, and I'm someone who loves natural art supplies, but who has become a big lover of digital ones as well, because you're gonna see, the fact that I was able to create this piece of art in the car with a full range of art supplies, as you see here on the left, all at my disposal, is only because I have them in my iPad. So what we're looking at right here is the interface for Tayasui Sketches app. If you've been following me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about it a lot. But it's a free app, and it's like a $4.99 to get all the bells and whistles. So here I just noticed the red tool at the left. It's red because I've selected it, and it's a pencil tool. Over at the right, you can just see that I'm scribbling, so that you can see how the pencil lines look, and then how if I trace over and over the same line, it gets darker and darker. This has a nice gritty textural feel that I love, both in natural and digital art supplies. So I'm working from Naomi Campbell, one of the massive fashion icons of my years of falling deeply in love with fashion in the late 80s. So this is like a 2015 cover of Vogue Brazil. I chose it because I love Naomi, and because she's wearing like a crochet beaded macrame dress. Okay, so here you can see I've put a straight vertical line. That's the plumb line. I just used that to have a reference of like where the head is in relation to her feet. I'm working from a photo, so I can literally look at the photo to see where her foot is related to her head. And I chose the pose I chose because it's super dancey. It has tons of movement. How do I know it has tons of movement? I look at the angle of the hips. You see how the hips are completely swung out? The legs are kind of crossed and overlapped. Obviously, this is advanced. But that's one of the reasons I share it. Sometimes the most exaggerated things are great learning tools. So I'm kind of making a skeleton, kind of making a, what do you call it? Like a stick figure of her, just to map, what I call map out the pose. Because what that means is I'm lightly drawing, and once I've lightly drawn her, it will be easy for me to see if there's anything I need to fix or change. So I have a block that I use to kind of position the rib cage and to position the hips or pelvis. So you can see those two blocks pretty clearly. The bust I see as spheres, and I kind of rest those on the rib cage shoulder block. I use spheres to plot out where the shoulders are too. And then I use like a big block to see the pelvis. So now I'm slowly, looking back and forth at the photo and sort of fleshing out the curves and proportions I see on the legs. This is a really interesting pose because the leg that's in the background is literally, you're going to see it's going to become much clearer as we add color and shadow. What you're going to see happen in this video is how color and shadow trick your eye into understanding what you see. So right now this may look like a lot of scratchy lines to you. One of the big things I love to teach my students is how lines are something we associate with writing. It's something we associate with schooling and education and literacy. But in visual literacy and in art literacy, one of the first exercises we really need to tune into is moving away from line. So right here you see the chicken scratches, you see all these lines. When I start adding color, these lines are going to become shapes rather than lines. And when I draw lines, what you want to develop is a sense that every line is just the edge of a shape, so that you're getting something really three-dimensional and sculptural on the page. I guess I'm using a lot of really heady language, but I'm just trying to kind of free form, free flow, describe to you what I'm thinking as I watch this video play out. So I'm fleshing out the arms again. I'm sort of retracing my steps, double checking myself against the photograph I'm working from, adding detail where needed. Now you can see the color picker show up on the right. I'm selecting a tone and I'm going to start adding color. So first thing I'm doing is selecting a color that's not on their automatic palette. Here's my picker. You can see there's like a little circle in the lower left, like a quarter circle of this picker. And I can drag it around. If I'm on orange, I can get all kinds of skin tones from like a light peach to a dark brown. Pick out a brown, go to the left now, and you're going to see me select a tool. I've selected a marker, and I can see it's skinny and rather opaque. That's not what I want for the skin. Now I've selected again, it's wide and it's opaque. Still not what I want for the skin, and that's okay. See how I can make things disappear after I test them out? This is a wonderful aspect of the app. If you look all the way to the right, there's an opacity and a size slider. You see that? So I use those to control how large the tip of my marker is. See that? Oh, and opacity to decide how sheer or transparent it is. I do want it to be slightly transparent to really feel like a marker. And I'm using a square tipped marker because those chisel tipped, square tipped markers are a lot of fun to work with. I also like them because they're actually, I can't control them completely because they have that big chunky tip. And I really like how not being able to have enough control frees me up into having a more like expressive and playful attitude rather than trying to be super perfectionist. Okay, so again, I'm working from a photo, so I'm just filling in skin everywhere that I see skin in the photo. And because I'm using a large chisel-tipped marker, her body is like comes to life very quickly. I'm always amazed how once I add wet media, be it, watercolor or marker, when I'm adding sheer color, it's really, the body on the page really comes to life. It's like that's the defining moment that she becomes real. You see how when I add this color, all those scratchy little lines become unified into a single shape. Okay, that's one of the big things that I try to instill in my students. Is one of the most important things I think that you want to pick up. It's kind of counter to what we think drawing is like. We think drawing is about a lot of little lines, and this is an opportunity to see it as a bunch of large shapes, okay? And so now I think because she's wearing like a macrame or crochet kind of dress, first thing I'm doing is I'm showing all the parts of her dress where her skin is showing through. And then there's like an opaque layer. That's where I've left things white. Now I'm going to select a new color. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm testing out what happens when I layer the marker color. You see how when I put a new layer over an existing layer, it gets darker. Undo on an app like this, if I use 2 fingers and swipe to the left, I'm able to undo anything I've done. What I'm doing now is adding shadows, so it's very easy for me to shade just by adding more of my color in some areas. I always advise, to shade half of everything you've colored. You don't want to shade something and not shade anything else. So I really shade like half of everything. If you're working from a photo, you can just look at your photo and take really clear clues to where you see shadows. Squinting your eyes really hard will always help you to see those shadows. There's a little shadow here. Underarm is a really common place between the bust, under the chin. So how am I shading? I'm shading about half of everything, and I'm sort of shading the underside of everything because the light generally hits from above, and it feels like it's also hitting from the right hand side in this photo. But if I have a photo, which is a great way to build your vocabulary, is just draw the shadows you see. Squint as you look at the photo and then draw the shadows you see. And you see how when I laid down the flat skin tone, she already became really clear and understandable in a new way. Well, when I add shadow, even more so. At least that's how I feel. I hope that's how you feel too. And I really want you to think about drawing as a process. So I'm constantly like correcting myself or correcting my drawing. For example, up around the bust area, her rib cage was too skinny, it was too narrow. I hadn't drawn it as wide as it really is, so I just added to it. I can do that at any time. I can add to things, I can move things. You'll often hear me joking how, I'll have a sketch with like 4 legs on it because I'll just keep moving the leg till I get it where it needs to be. I think it's really important that you give yourself that freedom to pivot, to reposition yourself, to correct yourself in a non-judgmental, playful way. And that actually, all these little changes, they're all part of the truth, right? You're drawing what's true for you. So actually, every time you draw a new line or add a new shape, you're actually adding a lot of movement, process, and layers to your drawing. And to me, that's value. That's like, I can see the handwork. It's like looking at a beaded dress. It's like you know that there were hands there. And that's how I like my artwork to look a lot of the time. Sometimes I like to go like totally clean, but I love building up a drawing too. So here there's a darker fabric in this area, and it's kind of a reddish brown, so I've selected the color. I'm just laying in the color on that part of her dress. There we go. Just filling it in, and because the marker color, see, I'm correcting myself again. When I looked at the photo compared to what I just drew, I said, oh, no, the hem of that skirt has a lot more curve than I thought. Okay, so correction, no problem. The really awesome thing about where this sketch is going is that we're going to have all kinds of textured layered over this. And actually, the recording's going to end before I get to the final finished piece, but I think there's so much to be gained from watching the process here. Okay, so I decided to take a break from the clothes. I always say that the hair is also part of the silhouette. The silhouette is the shape of the clothing, right? Hair is always part of the whole silhouette of the look. So if it's just a design illustration or a design sketch, maybe you're only focusing on a garment. But if you're trying to create a whole look as a designer, then don't underestimate, what the hair can do by being part of that whole silhouette. How does it relate to her body, to the garments and the pieces, color-wise, texture-wise, shape-wise. I mean, especially shape-wise. Okay, so I felt it out in a very light, pale kind of gray, and now I'm like filling it in and getting deeper and deeper, capturing the shape that I see. Okay, and then I was zoomed in to do that because I was using an iPad mini, which has a really small screen, so I love to zoom in to get into detail. But if you're zoomed in, just remember not to stay there too long, because you'll lose track of how what you're doing relates to the whole. I'm very much into like this holistic experience of feeling the whole drawing, the whole look, the whole design on the page. So if you stay zoomed in for too long, you may work out a section that's not really in harmony with everything else. I mean, it's okay, but it's something to really think about, not to stay zoomed in forever. So here I am. I'm still zoomed in because I wanted to get details into her face. And at this time, I never had a fine pointed stylus either. So in the photo I'm working from, she has really, really strong makeup. So I took, you see how it's an opaque tool with a lot of crumbly edges on it? That's because it's a crayon tool. So it's really opaque and it's really bright, but it has those crumbly edges. Now I'm using black. It also has crumbly edges, but it's the pencil tool. So that is like much thinner and not as opaque. That's the big difference. You can see that eyeshadow was like flat out opaque, and in Tayasui sketches I always use the crayon tool when I'm trying to get that opaque effect, and I kind of exaggerated it here because it was so strong in the photo that I wanted to get the same amount of drama with that like shock of teal. It really kind of creates a color story on the page. So now I've got my pencil and I'm going in there and really feeling out all the finer details, because what I call the macro details, like the overall details, have all been kind of plotted out already. You saw me do all that. Now it's time to start going in and really looking in close at texture, at the beading, at, you know, how many rows of this and that, exactly how tall is the top she's wearing, how wide are the armbands. And in a sense, I'm actually taking notes. So I'm just really, taking notes. What's going on here? What's going on there? And I love doing it in pencil because it has that gritty, sheer look, and I can always come in later and get more specific, which I indeed will. Here we go. I'm trying to find, I think at this point, I was trying to decide where to go next. I'm shading under the bandeau here because it's like anything that's under anything, I usually shade. But it's probably also because when I'm looking at the photo, I'm looking for things that are dark, right? So here's where you have like thick layers of beading over the skin. So using the darker shadows make it look more thick and like popping off of the skin. So the more I darken the skin, the farther the skin will look like it is from the surface of the garment. Does that make sense? Okay. Now I'm just cleaning up some of the lines around the skin using a pencil, but I have to tell you the truth, you know, it's such a very fine pencil that I can see it, but I can see it's not that effective. I'd be better off using a thicker pencil. So here I am increasing the size of my pencil, and then it's like I'm going to try, and I'm increasing the opacity as well, testing it out, cleaning it up, and see how I'm getting a more visible line. So that's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Okay, so that straight line you see is where I start to see the fringe on this macrame dress. So I'm feeling out the shape of the silhouette, and then I'm really capturing the movements of the fringe. The great thing about this particular photo is not only is she dancing, but she's wearing a garment that dances with her. So all of that fringe is moving this way and that. I also chose this picture because I love Brazil, because Naomi Campbell is so special to me, and also because fringe and beading and handcraft and handmade things, unique, one-of-a-kind garments, using especially Brazilian handcrafts, it just it means so much to me. It's just a very personal of what I love. So I kind of gave a hint of the fringe, and then the macrame or crochet, I'm not sure which it was right now, throughout the body of the dress, it's all like lattice work. So I kind of plotted that out with my pencil. And oh my gosh, there's only 1 minute left to this video. So I've basically, to the action part of this video, what I'm going to do is when this one wraps up in about 30 seconds, I'm just kind of cleaning up the browns. I'm going to stop recording this pre-recorded. This is a pre-recorded video. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few slides where I show you the finished versions and tell you a little bit about what I did when I finished it. But do you feel the movement, the proportion, the general detailing of this? What do you think? Aren't you tempted to have art supplies in your digital device too when you're on the go? This was an iPad mini in a parking lot, and I'd love to see what you create in a parking lot today.
So let's zoom in. Now that I've got everything mapped out, you'll see how I came in with markers, wide and narrow markers, and just filled in the rest of the colored string, the colored beading. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe and comment below. Let me know what's going on with you, what you'd like to see in upcoming videos. See you soon. Signing off for now. Bye.